Happy Tuesday. Welcome into Soccer Morning. Ready to go the day after the United States women's national team took care of business in the round of 16 at the World Cup in Canada. They took care of business. They beat Colombia 2-0. Was it impressive? Maybe not. Was it comprehensive? No, not really. But in the end, they come out on top. They move on to the quarterfinals where they'll have a showdown with China. China, the team that the United States women beat in the 1999 Women's World Cup final in front of that gigantic crowd at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. So that'll be fun. We'll talk about the U.S. women today. Jeff Kassouf from NBC Sports joins us in just a couple minutes. Jeff is covering that tournament. He'll give us his insight into that performance by the U.S. women, what it will take to beat China. And remember, there's a couple of wrinkles here. With that victory over Colombia comes a couple of complications now that Jill Ellis has to deal with. And so before we get to Jeff, before we take your phone calls later in the show, go ahead and get ready for that. Get yourself lined up. Maybe make some notes, a couple of talking points. Happy to have you guys call us up at the end of the show. But before we get to Jeff Kassouf, let's do some news. We'll start up in Canada with the U.S. women beating Colombia 2-0. The goals from Alex Morgan and Carly Lloyd. Good to see Alex Morgan back on the score sheet for the first time in forever based on her injury problem. She was a starter in that match, looked very vibrant, very spry. Ends up getting the first American goal. A goal that came immediately after Abby Wambach had missed a penalty kick. And Abby Wambach took that penalty with her left foot, which was a thing on Twitter. When asked about it, she indicated that she just decided to change, been doing it for the last couple of months because she had always taken them right-footed. And she didn't want to telegraph her kicks or give a book to the opposing goalkeepers. No. This is also a situation in which Colombia's starting goalkeeper had been sent off with a red card for the foul that led to the penalty, the foul on Alex Morgan. So I very seriously doubt it would have been much of an issue. You had a third-string goalkeeper in net for Colombia. All you have to do, put it on frame somewhere inside the post. Don't think about it too much. And she did. She opened up, and she missed. Luckily, the United States got those two goals. Carly Lloyd actually took a penalty to give the United States that second goal. Clearly, Abby Wambach was not going to take that second one after the first miss. The reviews on that performance, the attack lacking, cohesion lacking, midfield lacking, defense solid again. And that seems to be the strength of this U.S. team. If they're going to win a World Cup, they're going to have to ride that back line all the way to the World Cup final. Also in yesterday's action, England beat Norway 2-1. All those goals coming in the second half. So England comes back from a one-goal deficit to beat Norway and progress in the tournament. Your round of 16 is nearly filled out. As I mentioned, China and the United States on June 26th. That's Friday. By the way, I will be on Rabble.tv at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time talking about USA-China, so join me there, Rabble.tv. Germany-France that same night, which is the game that will determine if the United States gets past China, and certainly that's no easy task. And I failed to mention that both Megan Rapinoe and Lauren Holiday received their second yellows of the tournament in that game against Colombia, and now will miss the China match. So Jill Ellis has to juggle those issues. We'll talk to Jeff about that. Germany and France in the other quarterfinal on that side of the bracket. So the winner of that match and the United States and China will play in the semis in Montreal on the 30th. On the other side of the bracket in total, Australia will play the winner of Japan and Netherlands, a game that happens today. And England and Canada will play in the other quarterfinal with a semifinal berth on the line. So the Women's World Cup getting down to the nitty-gritty, down to when it all matters or counts or whatever. Now it's for real or something is the hashtag out there. That's what I've been seeing. Down in South America, Copa America continues. A couple of interesting stories out of that tournament as we get ready to progress with the 2015 Copa America. We covered this in depth with Jack Lang on yesterday's show. A good chat. If you missed that, go back and listen to the podcast version of the web show at worldsoccertalk.com. But a couple of stories out of Chile. Number one, Chilean authorities have declared an environmental emergency in Santiago, Chile. This is due to smog that sits over the city. There's mountains surrounding Santiago that's holding in this pollution. It's very possible that this could impact the tournament, although the emergency order had no immediate effect on preparations for Wednesday's Copa America soccer match between Chile and Uruguay. Chile's team trained on Monday, as did Colombia, which is due to play on Friday. But Santiago Regional Governor Claudio Orrega refused to rule out extending the emergency to Tuesday or Wednesday if conditions do not improve. That time we see on television, we are talking about it. We're 100% involved in soccer, said Uruguayan captain Diego Godin, saying basically we don't know what's going on with the pollution. We're just focused on our team. But this could have an issue on, could have an impact on the games in South America. The other element of this tournament that came out, the other story came out yesterday, is that CONMEBOL does not have sufficient funds to cover the $10 million in prize money for this year's Copa America winners, according to a report in Uruguay. CONMEBOL reportedly finds itself in a difficult and compromising dilemma given the corruption scandal that revolves around FIFA. The report alleges CONMEBOL cannot pay the $10 million that it will owe to the top four placing teams. The champions get $4 million. Second, third, and fourth place teams get $3, $2, and $1 million respectively. With all that has happened with CONMEBOL, there's not enough for one book. There's not enough for 20 books. It's frightening, said Wilmer Valdez. 20 books on the corruption scandal. This was the president of the Uruguayan Football Association, vice president of CONMEBOL, who was quoted in this story. So not good for Copa America winners. You're not going to get paid. And I have a story here I might get to later on in the show as to how to improve Copa America. This is from Tim Stannard, La Liga Loca, who's advocating for a tighter, smaller, more compact Copa America, which I could certainly see the value of. Let's take a break. When we come back, Jeff Kassouf, NBC Sports, going to review that U.S. win over Colombia. Look ahead to that game against China. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, worldsoccertalk.com. This Friday, the USA faces China in the quarterfinals of the Women's World Cup, and I'd like to invite you to join me for a very special audio broadcast that I'll be hosting on Rabble.tv. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on television, press the mute button, and then head over to Rabble.tv to listen to me sharing my analysis. You can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Plus, I'll be talking you through the game as we watch the U.S. play China in a repeat of that epic 1999 Women's World Cup final. And if you have an iPhone, install the Rabble.tv app today and add a comment to the broadcast message board, then listen live via the app on Friday. Does the USA have what it takes to make it to the semifinals of the Women's World Cup? Find out this Friday, June 26th at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, and cheer on the red, white, and blue with me on Rabble.tv. The best way to watch Copa America and the greatest players in the world, including Leo Messi, Neymar, James Rodriguez, and Alexis Sanchez, is on Sling International's exclusive broadcast of Copa America on beIN Sport. Sling TV is the #1 live international TV service in the United States. It's a safe and legal streaming service that delivers your favorite sports and more to your TV, tablet, phone, and computer. For just $10 a month, you can watch every single Copa America game live or on demand, featuring Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, and more. Plus, Sling International gives you access to Barca TV, Real Madrid TV, the New York Cosmos, Serie A, and more top networks offered by Sling TV. There's no commitment, no annual contract, and no satellite dish needed. Don't miss the best leagues in the world on Sling International. Sign up today at www.sling.com/soccer. Again, that's sling.com/soccer. The best way to watch Copa America and the greatest players in the world, including Leo Messi, Neymar, James Rodriguez, and Alexis Sanchez, is on Sling International's exclusive broadcast of Copa America on beIN Sport. Sling TV is the #1 live international TV service in the United States. It's a safe and legal streaming service that delivers your favorite sports and more to your TV, tablet, phone, and computer. For just $10 a month, you can watch every single Copa America game live or on demand, featuring Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, and more. Plus, Sling International gives you access to Barca TV, Real Madrid TV, the New York Cosmos, Serie A, and more top networks offered by Sling TV. There's no commitment, no annual contract, and no satellite dish needed. Don't miss the best leagues in the world on Sling International. Sign up today at www.sling.com/soccer. Again, that's sling.com/soccer. The best way to watch Copa America and the greatest players in the world, including Leo Messi.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning talking about the U.S. women's national team's win over Colombia 2-0 with Jeff Kassouf from NBC Sports. He is in Edmonton, about to fly out of Edmonton, as a matter of fact. I don't think we've woken him up because I think he's leaving soon, but he's certainly certainly a busy man. Jeff, we appreciate the time. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Now, I imagine you had a kind of a late night processing that, writing that game and covering all of the ins and outs of the U.S. performance over Colombia 2-0. Again, what we're taking out of this match mostly, and this seems to be across the board, whether you're reading soccer sites or general sports coverage or whatever, is that the United States is continuing to underperform, and yet here we are with a team moving on to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, you mentioned processing it. I mean, it took a bit to process post-game sort of. I think that, everybody, every neutral, every objective folk, sat there and said, kind of, what is this? That first half was not good. I think the players acknowledged that. But, for me, my takeaway was, and I think a few of us that were there, in that sort of mix zone and that sort of taking it in was players still talking about, they haven't peaked yet. They're still reaching their peak and they're still coming into form. And the question sort of came from that was, well, when does that come? Because
Right.
You're talking about a quarterfinal of a World Cup now. And, they are at least outwardly confident that it will come, that they're still finding their form and that they're still going to reach their peak, that they have improved. I think that the Nigeria game, the one prior to this, did show a good deal of improvement, even if the score didn't necessarily reflect it. But this Colombia game, round of 16, first half, I thought was not great at all. Second half a bit better, but I came away from that game wondering if that stays 11-11. I have to wonder what the result was or would be, or even if that has to go in extra time or even worse for the U.S. because I think that Colombia was disciplined, they were smart, very similar to how they played France in that they were patient, both defensively and in the counterattack. They took their moments. Nothing outwardly dangerous, but I think you could almost say the same for the U.S. aside from a couple of big saves.
Yeah, it's and you had obviously the first half, as you mentioned, not the greatest. Alex Morgan starting again for the second consecutive match. They definitely need her to be at the top of her game to even threaten opposing defenses and create something. She ended up doing that eventually, winning the penalty and then scoring the goal of her own, a goal of her own. How did you assess her play, and how important is she moving forward?
Well, I think her importance remains, what it was. I think that she's essential to this team winning the World Cup. I wrote that, before the tournament. I think it still remains true. She's still sort of fully finding her form as well. I think you look at, back-to-back starts here, as you mentioned, Nigeria and now against Colombia. We talked to her. It was funny. We waited. She was one of the randomly selected players, so it was about an hour and a half later, and we talked to her, and there was just a sense of relief that she scored. So, I think that there's a bit of a monkey off her back in that sense. It was prior to that, it was over 3 months back in the Algarve Cup. So, if she can get going, I think that that's certainly one of the answers, because obviously it's been talked about plenty that, the goal scoring hasn't quite been there. And now you look at, some of the magic moments, as they keep getting referred to, or a lot of them really, have come from Megan Rapinoe, who's now suspended. So, you take Rapinoe out of this quarterfinal for the U.S., who's really been sort of that spark. I think that she's done, not only just the goal scoring, you look at that Australia game in particular, but some of the subtle things where she can earn fouls. I wrote that last game, and you look, she earned that PK, the second PK, the one that got finished. I think she's going to be sorely missed, Megan Rapinoe.
I want to come to that, but before we do that, let's talk about the most divisive figure, at least for fans in this team. And oddly enough, it's not Hope Solo anymore. It's Abby Wambach, whose position as a starter is up for question. And obviously, she has incredible influence over this team. She's a legend, but it hasn't gone that well. I mean, she scores against Nigeria, all well and good. In this particular game, I'm not sure about her effectiveness, and she misses the penalty, Jeff. When we get to Friday, we're likely to see her up top again.
Friday, I can't see her starting again just based on minutes and sort of how they've said they're going to manage her. I think Wambach's played more than, certainly if you look at how Jill Ellis and her staff said that, they would manage her coming into it, which was always sort of a to be determined, but, in a sort of a rotating role. You look at her starting 3 out of 4 games so far. I can't see her from a minutes perspective doing so. And if she does, maybe it's a case where it's sort of predetermined that she's off in 60 minutes or so. I don't know. Abby Wambach, the competitor, I'm sure is probably in there saying, hey, I can go, I'm good. And she very well could be. Ellis said this week, actually, or sometime in this past week, that Wambach's form is her fitness is peaking. So, I don't know. I think it'd be surprising to see her start on Friday, but, that I'm talking about that from a fitness perspective. And you look at it from Wambach, the competitor, who we know, I'm sure is raring to go. So I don't know. I think that Nigeria game, I actually thought that she was spectacular on the ball, with it at her feet, checking back into the midfield, holding up the play and creating a bit for them, which is not what she's known for at all, obviously, but I thought she was very good there. Against Colombia, not as much. I think that the team in general really had a good deal of trouble getting going against Colombia in that first half. And then, like I said, 3 minutes into the half, really a game changer with the red card.
Yeah. So Wambach, as you said, perhaps not a starter against China because of fatigue and the minutes she's logged, but they also, as you've identified, they're going to be missing Megan Rapinoe, Lauren Holiday because of yellow card accumulation. The big one, both important players, Jeff, but I think a lot of people see Rapinoe as being more important, if only because you expect the Chinese to pack in, to sit back, to require the United States to break them down. And if you don't have Megan Rapinoe, who does that job?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that'll put some pressure on Tobin Heath for sure. Carly Lloyd will take on some of that. Morgan Bryan's going to be thrown into a huge situation here now, replacing Lauren Holiday for at least a day. So I think that it's going to put a lot of pressure on a midfield that is very much underperformed for the most part, especially outside of Rapinoe, which sort of, again, puts that emphasis on her absence. So, you're looking at Bryan, Lloyd, and you're probably, it's probably Kristen Press that steps in the absence of Rapinoe. So, I think the two coming in, who it sounds like, just sort of from last night, what was said by Jill Ellis and, some others, that, Bryan for sure, and then probably Press. There's going to be a lot of pressure on them to create. I think Press is, somebody who has the potential to be, one of the best, if not the best players on this team, but hasn't shown it at this World Cup at all yet. So, we'll see against China, where I think that if you're a fan tuning in, the fact is this could be another ugly one against China in the sense that a very defensively disciplined team is China. U.S. obviously through 4 games in this tournament has pretty much been riding their back line to success and not necessarily creating in the ways that they want to. So I think that this one could be a bit of a war of attrition in terms of just 2 defensive teams that maybe one game-changing moment that'll decide it.
Jeff, the expectations for this team are very high. And that creates this sort of negative vibe even around a win like this, or around the Nigeria win, or around the Australia win. It doesn't matter, because they're expected to be better than this, certainly in terms of their style and the entertainment value of the soccer. People are quick to criticize, and for good reasons. And certainly you can imagine that when they go up against, if they can get past China, that's not a given, but if they get past China, they're going to be facing either France or Germany, and that's going to be the stiffest test of the tournament by a wide margin. And they may not have the quality to beat one of those teams, one of those favorites. And yet there are some things that we should kind of crow about here, or at least highlight in terms of the positive aspects of it, and that is the back line. That is the defensive strength of the team, which didn't allow Colombia anything yesterday.
No, they didn't. I think I was writing, I kind of compare this squad to Italy 2006 a little bit of, similar sort of getting out of the group of death, very defensive, kind of borrow, kind of a Sauerbrunn comparison maybe. It's been the defense for sure, as you mentioned, and that's been the saving grace many times during the group stage. I think that maybe a little bit less so against Colombia, just in terms of I don't think that I thought Colombia was decent and patient, but their first shot on goal was in the 84th minute. So in terms of dangerous opportunities, there really wasn't a whole lot from them. And I guess that's also credit to the back line. I thought that they were a little bit off collectively last night, especially in distribution. There were some stray passes from, Becky Sauerbrunn and Julia Johnson have been the 2 best players in this tournament for the U.S. Megan Rapinoe up there as well. I thought Johnson and Sauerbrunn were a bit off in distribution, but, again, like you said, they clamped down. No real opportunities for Colombia, but, that back to that sort of vibe and attitude that you mentioned. Yeah, I mean, I think it was first question, in the press conference, and it's, there were many that followed. It was sort of to Jill of, hey, are you happy with how this team is playing? Obviously happy to advance. And she's a bit defensive about it, that, she's just, it's a World Cup and you're here to advance. And that's what they did. So, there's always going to be those questions, and I think that those questions remain because, as you said, this France-Germany quarterfinal, the way it stands now and on form of those 2 teams, and, again, not jumping to too many conclusions the way things are going, but, if it's the U.S. against one of them, I think either of those teams has to be significantly favored the way the form's going right now.
Let me come back to the yellow cards again. Rapinoe and Holiday, both of them getting their second. First of all, this is a ridiculous rule, and FIFA needs to address it, but that's for another time, perhaps, Jeff. When asked about the yellow cards after the match, Abby Wambach says, I don't know if they were yellows. It seemed like the referee was purposely giving those yellows to maybe players she knew were sitting on yellows. I don't know if that's a psychological thing. Who knows? There's some chatter that this is going to get her in trouble. Do you have any sense of that?
No, I didn't get any chatter that this is going to get her in trouble. And it's actually one of those things that's come up a couple of times. I would say, and not the ref, if I can explain it, I guess, the context of it has, this sort of, the turf comments as well. Look, did she say these things? Absolutely. Standing there in the moment, though, I have to say, whether it's the turf, whether it was last night with the ref, standing there in the moment in person, hearing the words said, and again, these are, the print area is separate from the TV area, so there is no video or anything like that of these things. The context, I think is interpreted, differently person to person, because a couple of us came out of that, and everybody came out of it saying this is ridiculous, right? But a couple of us came out of it, more than a couple of us, thinking it was kind of a, thinking out loud moment rather than a blaming moment. And I think that when it's just the words in print, that, it can read a bit differently. I'm not defending her at all. I mean, it's a bit crazy, and the turf thing is obviously, scoring more goals on grass. That's sort of a tired argument at this point, but it's another one of those moments that, I think if you're there, you kind of come out of it as, was that ridiculous? Sure. Was that sort of the main takeaway of what she said? No, not at all. So, I didn't get any sense that she would get in trouble, though. I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. Jeff, I don't know what kind of bubble the team exists in. I imagine you're aware of the comments of Michelle Akers on Sirius XM last night. She said, "We don't have all our pieces together. We aren't performing at our best. Some of our coaching decisions are unexplainable. If she," meaning Jill Ellis, "is pleased with the way we played, then what the hell is she doing coaching our U.S. team? I would expect more out of my team if I want them to be world champions." Now, obviously, Michelle Akers has a platform for this because she's one of the greatest women players of all time and a member of world championship teams. But I don't know that this is something the team should be paying attention to. Would you expect this to trickle into camp? And how aware are they of what's going on around the media-wise?
Yeah, I think it would probably make its way. I would say it probably has already, if I had to guess. I think that they have talked about a bubble quite a bit. I think we've sort of come to learn that it certainly varies player to player. I think for them, it's trying to create a bubble, as they call it. I think it's trying to stay away from everything. But, everything that has come up, back to Abby, the way she sort of put it to us is that she reads everything and she loves it. She loves the chatter, even if it's sometimes negative or if it sometimes has a go at her, that, she likes that people are talking about women's soccer. Mm-hmm. I think that there are plenty of others who probably also, are aware of, what's out there and what's being said. I think that, look, it's the digital age, right? I mean, you see players tweeting and other things. I guess you could theoretically log on to Twitter, send out a tweet and not look at anything, but I don't think that that's happening, obviously. So, I'm sure that these comments have probably already made their way back to most, if not all of them, and it'll be a matter of how you process it. Some will be, some will not care. Some might find it motivational. I don't know how Jill would take it, but it varies. But yeah, they're certainly they're not in a closed off world.
Okay. And as for Michelle's comments specifically, I don't know that anybody thinks there's a lot wrong with those comments, except for perhaps maybe a little harsh on Jill Ellis, considering that she won the group and she's got them into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think probably strongly put, as you sort of alluded to. Maybe Michelle Akers has a little bit, longer of a leash to put something strongly than, you or I or somebody else. So, yeah, I think a bit harsh, but, the root of it being that, hey, this isn't, pretty or good enough. I think that that's just the more direct version of what a lot of people, including players, are saying, that, hey, it's not good enough. So, we'll see if anything changes. I know that, back to the bubble stuff, I think some of the criticisms that were out there certainly made their way through the bubble to some extent from what I understand from some outsiders, or at least connected to them. So, we're yet to see really a huge response to it, right? We thought that's the thing that, back to the point of when do you peak? I mean, it's the quarterfinals. Australia was a flat start, and then they turned it around. Sweden was probably, fairly flat throughout the match. Nigeria was this match where everybody looked and said, all right, Nigeria's terrible on set pieces. Their goalkeeper's been off. Defensively, they're not that great. This could be the game that they get going. And they kind of eked out a 1-0 result against a 10-man team. And then again, you're looking at a 10-man team against Colombia where 11 versus 11 for the 47 minutes or so that we saw that was not very pretty. So they're yet to hit this peak in this form. And again, might be able to get away with that again against China. We'll see. But I just don't see that being good enough against France or Germany.
Yeah, certainly. So one task before they need to worry about France or Germany, that's against China. The last thing I'll ask you, Jeff, and I'm sort of a big picture guy. I like asking questions that go beyond just what happened on the field. And I think we've sort of broken that down pretty in depth here. The element of Akers making her comments. In sort of a different context, and obviously you have Julie Foudy, and you have Heather Mitz, and you have all of these former players who are now analysts. It's the way things go. We take our ex-players, we put them in suits and dress them up and put them on television, and they give us their thoughts. There's been some allegations, and certainly when the tournament started and all of the Hope Solo stuff was blowing up, there's some thoughts that this is still a small U.S. soccer club, and they were deferring and trying to wash away the allegations on Solo, maybe for their own, maybe for Fox reasons and ratings reasons, but also probably because, hey, we all know each other, we're all friends. Is there something to be said for harsher criticism coming from figures like Akers and Foudy and Mitz, etc., because it will push them forward, or is that just do you not see anything else there than what's on the surface?
I think that a message like that from Akers probably, or certainly delivers, more of a punch than, I guess if you or I were to say something like that, right? Just from her pedigree. We've been sort of living off TSN coverage up here just because that's what we get. So I can't 100% speak to sort of what's been on in the U.S. even, to be honest.
Sure.
But in general, yeah. I think that those are messages that are whether they're good, bad, indifferent, they're heard a little bit more loud and clear from a player. Co-player of the century, if we're talking about Akers here, and others. I think I might have seen that Chastain had some stuff to say. I know Scurry's been doing a lot of media. Mm-hmm. I think that those messages are delivered. And she said, you listen to the beginning of that before she had the sort of money quote, if you want to call it that. And she said, I look at this team and I can see that Tony DeChico does as well. And we're frustrated because, we see our team out there and we see ourselves and that's what sort of we built or however you want to put it. So I think that that's, a huge element to it of, these players have, still a huge connection to this team. And obviously, these initial world championships that are World Cup titles that haven't come since. So, I think it delivers a little more punch when it's Michelle Akers versus maybe, somebody else.
Yeah, Jeff, I know you got to run. Just the last thing here. I saw Charlie Boehm on Twitter last night in aftermath of this game, sort of alluding to maybe some internal issues. I don't know if any of that has trickled out. I don't know if you have any sense of that at all, but would it surprise you if there was some turmoil in terms of maybe lineup selection, clearly, who gets to play, who's not, Abby's influence, health of certain players and their playing time? Would it be surprising at all if there was this wasn't the calmest U.S. camp?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. I can't say that I've heard in terms of turmoil or anything. I have, like I said, I heard from sort of some attached sort of neutral parties that the bubble is not impenetrable in terms of hearing that criticism and maybe adjusting or not adjusting to it, but taking it in and maybe processing it. And so I think that certainly the criticisms are heard. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's even more to that. I can't say that I know of more to that. I wouldn't be surprised, but certainly I think that the bubble, so to speak, is not necessarily this airtight thing.
Jeff Kassouf, NBC Sports, Equalizer Soccer. He's covering the Women's World Cup and joining us on Soccer Morning. Appreciate the time, Jeff. Know you got to run. We'll let you go and hopefully talk to you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
Good flight. Good flight. We'll talk to Jeff as the tournament continues. U.S. in the quarterfinals on Friday against China. I'll be on Rival.tv talking about that game. Join me then. When we come back, we'll take your phone calls. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. This Friday, the USA faces China in the quarterfinals of the Women's World Cup, and I'd like to invite you to join me for a very special audio broadcast that I'll be hosting on Rabble.tv. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on television, press the mute button, and then head over to Rabble.tv to listen to me sharing my analysis. You can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Plus, I'll be talking you through the game as we watch the U.S. play China in a repeat of that epic 1999 Women's World Cup final. And if you have an iPhone, install the Rabble.tv app today and add a comment to the broadcast message board, then listen live via the app on Friday. Does the USA have what it takes to make it to the semifinals of the Women's World Cup? Find out this Friday, June 26th at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, and cheer on the red, white, and blue with me on Rabble.tv. The best way to watch Copa America and the greatest players in the world, including Leo Messi, Neymar, James Rodriguez, and Alexis Sanchez, is on Sling International's exclusive broadcast of Copa America on beIN Sport. Sling TV is the #1 live international TV service in the United States. It's a safe and legal streaming service that delivers your favorite sports and more to your TV, tablet, phone, and computer. For just $10 a month, you can watch every single Copa America game live or on demand, featuring Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, and more. Plus, Sling International gives you access to Barca TV, Real Madrid TV, the New York Cosmos, Serie A, and more top networks offered by Sling TV. There's no commitment, no annual contract, and no satellite dish needed. Don't miss the best leagues in the world on Sling International. Sign up today at www.sling.com/soccer. Again, that's sling.com/soccer.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning. Phone lines wide open, 646-832-3909. Women's World Cup, Copa America, MLS Rivalry Week. Are you feeling the whatever you're supposed to feel for Rivalry Week? It starts tomorrow night, guys. It starts with TFC and the Montreal Impact tomorrow night. Rivalry Week is here. Now, look, I joke a little bit, but I am excited for rivalry games. I like rivalry games as a rule. I don't know about this scheduling thing where we're going to put them all together in 1 week. Not all of them. 5 games. 5 games measure up to the Rivalry Week standard. The MLS Heineken Rivalry Week standard. Let me just read for you from the MLS email sent out about what's coming up this week in MLS. MLS Heineken Rivalry Week kicks off with 5 fiery matchups. They're fiery, you guys. Fiery matchups. We've got, again, Toronto and Montreal kicking it off tomorrow night. the 401 Derby at BMO Field. Then the Texas Derby on, when is that? Friday? Friday night. 9 p.m. Eastern. The battle for the Capitan, which is that big cannon thing that they trade back and forth depending on who wins the season series. In the past couple of years, it's only been one game because FC Dallas was in the West and Houston was in the East. Now it's 3 games. FC Dallas has already won one of these games 4-1. So now Houston looking to get back into the fight for El Capitan. Then you have the California Clásico, which of all of these games probably is the one with the most history and, soccer history, the deepest soccer history, the most intriguing soccer history. You go back and look at the history of San Jose and the Galaxy playing, and they've got some great games in their past. Remember that game 2 years ago, Alan Gordon scoring in like the 94th minute at Stanford Stadium to lift the Quakes over the Galaxy? They scored twice in stoppage time to beat LA 3-2 in that game. That was a great game. Should have something to that one. Then we have, what are we going with? The Hudson, is that the Hudson River? I get my rivers confused in terms of which one applies to what. It's the Hudson River Derby. That's right. NYCFC, New York Red Bulls, Yankee Stadium. Andrea Pirlo might or might not be there. Who knows? In front of a lot of people. There's going to be 30,000 maybe? 35? 40? How many people are going to show up to Yankee Stadium for this game? They're selling a lot of tickets. People are excited. The Red Bulls already won the first game in Red Bull Arena, 2-1. And then you finish this off Sunday night, June 28th, Cascadia Cup Derby thing between the Portland Timbers and the Seattle Sounders. I need dramatic music. I need some serious I don't think I have any dramatic music here in my. This is all really kind of peppy stuff. I need dramatic music to talk about these games because this is serious rivalry week stuff, people. Let's go to Robert in LA. Talk some Women's World Cup. What's up, Robert?
Hey, good morning, Frank. How's it going?
It's going well. What's up?
I wanted to ask you about tonight's match, Japan and Netherlands. Who are you favoring?
Well, no, Japan's the defending champions. I don't think they've been that great so far, but they're here and they know how to win. And I would take them over sort of the new kids on the block with the Dutch.
Oh, you think they're gonna do that same style? I've been watching them. It's just holding the ball and doing they're very tactical or just possession wise. Yeah, they're
Japan, one of the more tactical teams in the world on the women's side. They know how to pass the ball around the park, and if they can do that, then the Dutch will never see it, and they'll find a goal or two, or maybe they'll take it to extra time, and should be fun. It should be a good game. I think it'll be tight.
Yes, because the Fox Islanders, they're saying they're going to do the Dutch are going to try and tackle kind of what the men do and just disrupt their flow.
Yes, you have to. Look, and then it becomes a challenge for the referee to find that line between losing control of the game and allowing physical play and actually punishing appropriate fouls. And I don't know what the Dutch yellow card situation is, but let's say they're effective with that and they end up with two players missing for their next round, for their quarterfinal match, which I think is going to be against either England or who is it? England?
It'll be Australia.
Oh, it'll be Australia. Okay, that's right. So if they miss out, that's right, because they're the one quarterfinal left. So they have Australia. That's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a very fun match. And can I ask you one more question?
Always.
All right, thank you. I was about last night's coverage. What was going on with his? I don't know. I wasn't watching the Fox feed. I was watching the BBC feed at a pub. But was there Dr. Joe asking random questions for him? Was that going on last night?
Asking Dr. Joe random questions?
Yeah, because that was going on my Twitter timeline. I just wanted to know if that was happening.
No. People are very divided on Dr. Joe. Lots of people don't like Dr. Joe. The people don't like Dr. Joe's interpretation of the game sometimes, and they went to him a couple of different occasions. On the yellow card situations for both Rapinoe and Lloyd. Holiday, and for the red card / penalty situation with Alex Morgan. And I guess people just don't like Dr. Joe. I don't know, Robert. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know what was going on. All right, that's what I want to know. Thanks for taking my call, Jason.
Thank you, Robert. Robert in Los Angeles. Let's go to Jay in Jersey. What's up, Jay?
Good morning. Are you surprised there have not been any Major League Soccer manager firings so far this year? And is anybody in the hot seat, you think? Because I would think Mike Pecky is just sitting there first in line for any opening that might occur.
Yeah, I don't know if Pecky's got his name out there, if he's being floated as a candidate by his agent or anybody, because I get the sense that Pecky is the kind of guy that he was so committed to that Red Bull cause. He might need a year to decompress before he goes into a new job. Am I surprised no one's been fired yet? Nope, not at all, because this is MLS. They have the playoff safety net. You really can't say that that a team is out, that is done for the year and has no hope until probably 3/4 of the way through. That's just the way things are. I would think, if you just looked at the standing and said, well, who's on the firing line? I think Pablo Mastroeni has to be, because he's inexperienced. It hasn't gone well. There's more talent than he's getting. There's more talent in Colorado than Mastroeni is displaying for that team right now. I got some feedback from you, Jay. I'm sorry about that. I got to let you go. But I'm not surprised at all that no one's seen the door. Colorado, I'll just work from the bottom up in these two conferences. In the West, you got Colorado, bottom of the table. Mastroeni, that's a cheap club too. I don't know that Kroenke wants to pay whatever severance Mastroeni would get. You got Owen Coyle at Houston. He's not going anywhere. His first year on the job. Jeff Kassouf at Real Salt Lake. There's an intriguing candidate, and I could imagine now that you have Garth Lagerwey out of the picture, I could imagine Deloy Hansen getting a little impatient and maybe looking for somebody to step in and save them if it doesn't get better. But they just came off a big win over Sporting. He's bought himself some time. In San Jose, Dom Kinnear, he's a legend there, and he's in his first year back. He's going to be fine. He's only 1 point off of the playoff places. Then you go FC Dallas, Sporting, LA, Portland, Vancouver, Seattle. None of those coaches are getting fired anytime soon. Go into the Eastern Conference. Chicago Fire, Frank Gallup. That's a project. They handed him the keys. They asked him to overhaul everything. If you think he has not yet seen the rewards of that, then maybe he's on the firing line. I don't think so, but he certainly would be 2 or 3 on any other list behind Mastroeni. Jim Curtin. With the way that Philadelphia burns through coaches, he's always got to be in the conversation. Then Jason Kreis not going anywhere. Jesse Marsch, hard to imagine he's going anywhere at this moment. I don't think Berhalter's in trouble. Frank Klopas in Montreal, he's pulled them up into 5th place. They have games in hand on everybody in front of them. I think he's probably bought himself a lot of time as well, especially considering that Champions League run. Toronto, I don't think right now that Vandy's going anywhere. Although if things turn south and they look like they're in trouble of missing the playoffs again, you could imagine him getting replaced, because that's what Toronto does. We know Adrian Heath's not going anywhere. Neither is Jay Heaps, and certainly neither is Ben Olsen. So there you go. There's your list. I mean, there isn't a sack race, the way the Brits like to say, in MLS, because MLS provides a different sort of atmosphere. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. If you're a coach and you have some stability, if you know it's unlikely you're going to be fired in the middle of the season, maybe that gives you the opportunity to be a little bit more progressive with your tactics and with your team selection. I would hope so. We have a lot of conservative coaches in MLS, but we are pushing towards a future where that may not be always the case, and I hope that that's something that comes with the territory. I hope that we get coaches who are more adventurous with their teams. Rich on Twitter, I don't know who I feel more shaky about going into the weekend, the U.S. Women's National Team or the Red Bulls. He's not feeling good about this match coming up against NYCFC. Obviously a big game. Are you going out to that game, Trevor? Are you going to make it out there to see if Andrea Pirlo's in the skybox? I don't know. Vince on Twitter, Klopas is interesting because when Montreal win, they look great, but when they lose, they look terrible. No middle ground. This is true. This is true. When Montreal, and they're certainly a much better team at home than they are on the road, although I think over the last month or so they have wins in Chicago. Okay, no real big whoop there, but they also have a win in Columbus. And I know Columbus is struggling a bit at the moment, but that's still a relatively impressive win for Klopas and company. But as I said, nobody looks like a real candidate unless you put USWNT on that list. And again, considering the type of club that Colorado is, like, it's kind of tough to imagine that they fire him mid-season, have to pay him to go away and hire somebody else. Maybe they could elevate an assistant. But there's not a real clear candidate. I do think that Jay's got a point that Mike Petke should be a candidate. He should be out there as a possibility for somebody. He could probably come in and do a job. But I don't know. I mean, is Mike Petke the kind of guy? Remember how much he talked about loving the Red Bulls and wanting to help that club, being a local to that club, having played for so long for that club. Still has the record for appearances for a Metro Star Red Bulls player, I believe. Would he uproot his family to go across the country or go somewhere else for a 6-month stint to try to rehabilitate a team that's probably not going to make the playoffs if you're firing a coach? Because if you have that safety net of the playoffs, you really don't call time on your season until it's really far gone. Until not only are you well behind on points, but there's so many teams in front of you. I mean, you almost have to be in last place to imagine a team firing a coach. And things are changing so rapidly right now. This is a very parity-rich season. I mean, let's look at the West. First and ninth, separated by 9 points. The Sounders on 29, the Dynamo on 20. That's the difference between there's 9 teams included in that list of teams between 29 points and 20 points. And the Whitecaps are on 29 as well, although the Sounders have a game in hand. In the Eastern Conference, little bit more separation. DC United's put themselves ahead. They're 7 points ahead of the Revolution. And your third place team is on 20 points, Orlando. It just shows to show you how strong that Western Conference is, by the way. Everybody but DC and New England would be out of the playoff places in the Western Conference. So Orlando, Toronto, Montreal, and Columbus, who are all in the playoff place right now, with the Red Bulls and New York City FC tied on with the same number of points as Columbus and Montreal. None of those teams will be in the playoff places in the West. Jose on Twitter, they won't fire USWNT with the MLS All-Star game coming up. That's a good point. You got the All-Star game coming up at DSG. Man, I'd like to make it out for that game. Anybody want to be my benefactor? Send me to Colorado. Anybody want to sponsor that trip? Heineken's sponsoring Rivalry Week. They can sponsor me going to Colorado, right? Or maybe their competition would like to sponsor me to go to Colorado, and then I could just talk about maybe the local beer. Does New Belgium have a marketing budget for soccer? I know that's outwardly shameful, and I'm just trying. I'm just pleading for somebody to step up and send me to the All-Star game. Vince in Toronto would not be surprised to see Petke offered the Atlanta job. That would not surprise me. I'm not sure that that's the kind of coach they'll go for. I mean, I think that it'd be smart to hire somebody with an MLS pedigree. Is it going to be Mike Petke? Oh, man. You know who might be great for Atlanta? And this is obviously if Sacramento Republic doesn't get their expansion bid that they've been looking desperately for anytime soon. But maybe Preki could do a job in Atlanta. Don't you think that Preki could put a team out that could win games pretty quickly in MLS? I mean, if anybody could whip some charges into shape and win some games, it might be Preki. Now, the issue when you start an MLS expansion team, unless you already have a pre-existing coach who knows the club and knows some of the players and knows the community and is respected the way that Adrian Heath was, you you run the risk of hiring somebody you don't expect to be around very long. If it's somebody like Preki, because things can go south pretty quickly. Preki can rub people the wrong way. You might not get along with everybody, and then you're left trying to find a new coach. Well, I think what most people want to do with an expansion team coach is get somebody in who's going to run the whole project. They're going to not just run the project, but it's going to be invested, and they invested in him for a long stretch of time. This is why Adrian Heath, Orlando commits the playoffs for the first 3 years. Adrian Heath's probably not going anywhere. If they show signs of improvement, if they're able to play some nice soccer, I don't think he's going anywhere. Jason Christ in New York City. Now they could, by the nature of their money and sort of where they come from in terms of a footballing context, they might get impatient with Jason Christ and let him go. But when they hired him, the idea certainly was he was going to be their guy for a while. Steven on Twitter, TFC and Impact both have games in hand, and the points per game to be a playoff team in the West. I understand that. I'm just I know pointing to points is not the best measure of things, and Toronto's points per game is good enough to get them into the playoffs in the West. I think just barely. They might be in fifth, if I'm right. They would be in fifth, and Dallas would be in sixth. The Galaxy would be bumped. Sorry, DC United obviously would be in the playoffs. So you'd have Seattle. If you did this, DC United would be good enough. Maybe Toronto would be good enough. But that's it. Be really close. Steven on Twitter, as long as Ronaldo stays clear of the Atlanta franchise, they'll be all right. Well, I don't know. Why are we against Eric Ronaldo being a part of the Atlanta team? Why are we against Eric Ronaldo as an MLS coach? I say give the man his chance. Does he know soccer? Absolutely he does. Does he know MLS? Sure, of course he does. I'm gonna go with Eric on this. Why is it necessary for a guy who knows the league, knows soccer, has a reputation, has had success before as a coach? Let's not forget that Cal FC beat an MLS squad in the US Open Cup. And let's not forget that Eric Ronaldo did help turn around the Atlanta Silverbacks. I'm going to go with this. Why does he need to prove himself as an assistant before he gets a head coaching job? We've seen less qualified individuals get their chance to be head coaches in other leagues around the world. Jason Christ went directly from playing to head coach of Real Salt Lake. Why is Eric Ronaldo any different? Give the man a shot. Whether it's Atlanta, whatever. I mean, talk about a fixer. Talk about a guy you bring in. Your season's spiraling out of control. It looks like you might not make the playoffs. You got some serious concerns about the motivation of your team. Who do you call first? Okay, maybe I call Preki first. But then I call Eric Ronaldo. Okay, Madison, you're right. It was a train wreck in Atlanta. He did use Skype to coach that team. But maybe I'm talking about his technical directorship hood thing, whatever. Lions Roar on Twitter. European leagues and MLS are two opposite extremes. Europe fires good bosses just because they don't win a cup, and MLS never fire anyone. That's exactly where we're at. In Europe, depending on the league, depending on the condition, depending on the club, you can be fired for losing the wrong game. You lost against the crosstown rival, you're gone. Get out of here. We don't need you anymore. You can't even beat that team that we hate. In MLS, 5-game losing streak, 8 games without a win, 9 games, 10. Well, yeah, it's okay. No, it's good. We got a lot of rope here. There's a playoff system. Ask Jay Heaps what it's like to lose 8 games, keep your job, and then take your team to the MLS Cup final. That's not happening. I mean, anything even comparable is not happening in Europe. You lose 8 games in a row in Europe, you're probably gone. Now, is that better? Is it better or worse? Then you have a league down in Mexico where they have a playoff system, but because of the Apertura Clausura setup, the seasons are so short, and the chances to get in the playoffs, you have such a small number of games to get points to get in the playoffs that they go through coaches like tissue paper down there. The Ringo Show on Twitter. Jurgen Klopp to Atlanta, might as well start the rumors. How much money would it take to get Jurgen Klopp to go to Atlanta? Does that number exist, or is it an imaginary number? How many zeros? Like 17 zeros? Would it take all the Home Depot money in the world to get Jurgen Klopp to go coach Atlanta? And that's no slight on Atlanta or MLS, but we know where Jurgen Klopp's going to end up. We know where he wants to be. We know where the big high-profile leagues are, where where the trophies mean the most. We understand these things. Steven's got a good point as well when it comes to Wijnaldum. Atlanta's not the place for him based on the history. Probably not. There was a quick burn. They burned out on Eric Wijnaldum and vice versa pretty quickly there in Atlanta. 646-832-3909 or on Twitter @SoccerMorning. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Yeah, judging. Look, I'll come back to Steven's point about points per game. It's impossible to judge MLS right now. I have had to do the power rankings over the last couple of weeks for ESPN FC, and I'm sure people are just pissed at me. Just absolutely pissed at me for whatever I did wrong. Because I don't even know. It's subjective, first of all. It's power rankings. It's a subjective look at who the best teams in the league are. Or the worst, whatever. How they rank, how they line up. And I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not going to pull it up because I don't think it's worth it. But I still have Seattle number 1, even though they lost to San Jose this weekend. And they got the Timbers coming up, even though they don't have Dempsey and Martins right now. Because I don't see anybody who's challenging them yet. Who's right behind Seattle? The Vancouver Whitecaps, New England, DC United. LA might be coming on, like 5-1 against the Union's impressive enough, I guess, but they're not even close. They're in 5th place. They haven't played well most of the year. But so you go, okay, well, I'd use the standings to judge these teams. Oh, okay, well, here's your problem. DC United's played 18 games. New England's played 17 games. Orlando's played 16 games. Toronto's played 13 games. Montreal's played 12 games. Columbus has played 15 games. We can't line these things up. And even points per game, which, again, is my go-to because that's the only thing we got, even that's kind of misleading occasionally. Can't chalk up any of these games as wins. So Montreal is on 17 points in 5th place in the East. They've only played 12 matches. Okay, you go, okay, well, if they have 6 matches that they haven't played compared to DC United, then maybe they're, but who knows? Different points in the schedule. Different relative strength of schedule depending on where you are in your schedule. Crazy times. I wanted to touch on this before I go. I'll let you guys call up 646-832-3909 if you'd like. But I'm going to hit on this from Tim Stannard. This is at examiner.com, which I didn't even know was still a thing. But Tim's got 3 ideas for improving Copa America. And while Copa America can be brilliant on an atmosphere level and occasionally throw up a pretty intense, exciting game, there have been some duds in this tournament. The tournament overall has suffered from the quality. So Tim's got some ideas. First, number 1, no more freeloaders. This is basically kick out everybody who's not a CONMEBOL member. The Copa America literally has teams to make up the numbers to bring a confederation of just 10 teams up to 12. This year, Jamaica and Mexico brought a bottle to the Copa America, but left politely after the group stages were complete. Neither one of them put on much of a show. Certainly, Mexico underwhelmed. The trouble that this change would have, though, is that it leaves an awkward number of teams for a 4-team group format. So he's saying, look, you can't have the reason you bring in 2 teams is to make up for the numbers, so you have 3 groups of 4. What Tim suggests in his next point, number 2, is that you get rid of 2 teams from CONMEBOL to make for two 4-team groups. What is needed is a mini cull beforehand. The best 8 teams in South America should be there, not all 10. Pre-qualifying in an already cluttered calendar would not even be required. Instead, the last 2 teams in the league table of the most recent CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying group should have their invitations politely withdrawn. Paraguay and Bolivia would be missing out for this tournament. Harsh, but necessary. And when you do that, you trim this down to 2 groups of 4. You get rid of that third place qualifier. You make it necessary to finish in the top 2 positions in order to advance, because too many times teams are advancing with 1 win. No more third place fillers, no quarterfinals. The 2 best of the 2 groups would pass straight through to the semifinals to reduce the number of games to 5 in the whole competition for the potential winners and runners-up. The Copa America could then be slimmed down to an intense 2 weeks of football to reduce the demands on the overloaded Messi and to ensure that every single game actually matters. I could see this working, actually. I don't know that they do it. I think it means less money into the system, but it's pretty interesting. We could do with a mini Copa America. Not mini necessarily, but just a smaller, leaner, meaner Copa America. There we go. I'll leave with Vincent Toronto, who's going to just punt us out of here. Arthur Blank would have to write Klopp an blank check. There you go. There you go. Bill on Twitter, why not have 2 groups of 5? Well, that's because you end up with a team sitting out everywhere. You want everybody playing. You need to have everybody playing the in a round. You can't have a team sitting out. It extends the length of the tournament dramatically, Bill. Can't do that. All right, let's take it out of here. Thank you very much for listening to Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. Thank you to Jeff Kassouf for his insight. If you got Sirius XM FC, make sure you check us out over there. Some excellent guests. I think we're going to line up Michelle Akers on that show. So check us out on Channel 94. See you then.